Sheriff Mason Cooper had seen many things in his 23 years with the Oak Ridge Police Department, but nothing prepared him for what staggered through the station doors that rain-soaked Tuesday morning. A German shepherd, covered in blood and mud, collapsed onto the linoleum floor. Tied to the dog's back with what looked like torn clothing was 8-year-old Emma Mitchell, unconscious, her blonde hair matted with dirt and blood. "Jesus Christ," Deputy Larson whispered, rushing forward as the dog let out a protective growl despite its obvious exhaustion. "That's Jack Mitchell's girl," Cooper said, recognizing the child who'd been missing for 72 hours. "And that's their dog, Hunter." As paramedics carefully untied Emma, the dog's eyes never left her face. 3 tranquilizer darts hadn't stopped him from finding his way home. When FBI agent Reynolds arrived minutes later, Hunter somehow found the strength to stand again, limping toward the door, looking back at them with desperate intelligence. "He's trying to show us something," Reynolds said, watching the determination in the animal's eyes. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Hunter had always been more than just a dog. The 5-year-old German shepherd's muscular body bore the scars of his past, a jagged line across his left flank, a notch in his right ear, and the almost imperceptible limp when the weather turned damp. But it was the look in his amber eyes that told the real story, intelligence shadowed by trauma, loyalty tempered by loss. Emma Mitchell had been the only one to truly see past those scars. The 8-year-old with freckles scattered across her nose like constellations had the same haunted look that sometimes crept into her eyes, the look of someone who had witnessed too much, too young. She'd been just 3 when her mother, Sarah, was murdered in their home, a case that remained unsolved and hung over Oak Ridge like a persistent fog. Jack Mitchell had never recovered from finding his wife's body. The former Marine had traded military discipline for a bottle, his once imposing frame now perpetually hunched as if carrying an invisible weight. He tolerated Hunter's presence only because Emma had found the dog at the shelter 3 years ago and formed an immediate bond. Jack couldn't bring himself to explain that Hunter had been there that night, that the dog had belonged to Sarah first, had tried and failed to protect her, and had been dumped at the shelter by Jack himself in a moment of grief-stricken rage. FBI agent Cassidy Reynolds had requested the Mitchell case specifically. At 42, she'd built her career on finding missing children, driven by the childhood memory of her own sister's disappearance. She recognized the signs others missed, including the unusual behavior of family pets. When locals mentioned Hunter's agitation before Emma's disappearance, Reynolds took note while others dismissed it. Thomas Blackwood stood as Oak Ridge's model citizen, wealthy from old timber money, generous with the youth center he'd founded, and always first to organize search parties when tragedy struck. His perfect veneer showed no cracks, except perhaps in the way his eyes lingered too long on photos of Sarah Mitchell at memorial services. Dr. Sarah Andrews had moved to town just after Sarah Mitchell's murder, establishing the local veterinary practice with state-of-the-art facilities that seemed excessive for a small town. She'd taken a special interest in Hunter from the beginning, offering free care and making house calls that no other pet in town received. Sheriff Mason Cooper had lived in Oak Ridge his entire life. He knew everyone's business, or thought he did. The afternoon Emma disappeared started like any other Tuesday. Jack Mitchell had dropped her off at Oak Ridge Elementary with a distracted kiss on the forehead, his mind already on the construction job waiting across town. Emma had adjusted her backpack with the practiced resignation of a child used to being an afterthought, then turned to wave goodbye to Hunter, who sat obediently in the truck bed as he did every school day. "See you at 3, Hunter," she'd called, the only true warmth in her voice reserved for the dog. Hunter's tail had thumped against the metal truck bed, his eyes following her until she disappeared through the school's double doors. By 3:30 p.m., Jack knew something was wrong. The school playground had emptied of children, with only a few teachers remaining in the parking lot. Emma was nowhere to be seen. Hunter, who had been dozing in the truck, suddenly sat up straight, ears perked forward, a low whine building in his throat. "She's probably just at a friend's," Jack muttered, more to himself than to Hunter. But even as the words left his mouth, he knew it wasn't true. Emma didn't have friends, not since Sarah died, and they became that family in town. The little girl spent her afternoons either at the public library or at home with Hunter, the two of them inseparable. Jack approached Mrs. Winters, Emma's teacher, who was just getting into her car. "Have you seen Emma?" he asked, trying to keep the edge of panic from his voice. Mrs. Winters frowned, pushing her glasses up her nose. "Emma was picked up early today. A woman came by the office, said there was a family emergency." She tilted her head. "Wasn't that arranged by you?" The ground seemed to shift beneath Jack's feet. No one was supposed to pick her up but me. Within 20 minutes, Sheriff Cooper had organized the first search party. By nightfall, the FBI had been called in, with Agent Reynolds arriving from the field office in Richmond before midnight. Hunter had become increasingly agitated, pulling at his leash, trying to lead Jack toward the woods behind the school. "That dog needs to be controlled," Sheriff Cooper had said, watching Hunter strain against his collar. "He's disrupting the search teams." Jack had yanked Hunter back harshly. "Get it together," he'd snapped at the dog. Then, to Cooper, "He's been acting weird all day." Agent Reynolds had observed the interaction with interest. "How so?" "Whining, pacing, now this." Jack gestured at Hunter, who was still trying to pull toward the tree line. "He does this sometimes, gets fixated on something. Dogs can sense things we can't," Reynolds had said. "Might be worth seeing what he's picking up on." Sheriff Cooper had scoffed. "We've got trained K9 units on the way. Don't need an unstable pet interfering." And so Hunter had been taken home, locked in the laundry room while Jack joined the search. The dog's howls could be heard from down the street, a mournful sound that made neighbors close their windows despite the summer heat. As midnight approached with no sign of Emma, Jack returned home briefly to change clothes. The moment he opened the laundry room door, Hunter bolted past him, heading straight for Sarah's old study, a room Jack had kept locked since her death. The dog scratched frantically at the door, whining. "Stop it!" Jack shouted, grabbing Hunter's collar and pulling him back. "What's wrong with you?" In the struggle, Jack's elbow hit the side table where he kept his whiskey. The bottle crashed to the floor, and the sharp scent of alcohol filled the air. Hunter backed away, his eyes never leaving Jack's face. For a moment, Jack saw himself through the dog's eyes unshaven, reeking of booze and desperation. The same man who had abandoned Hunter at the shelter after Sarah's death, blaming the dog for not saving her. The memory hit him with unexpected force. 5 years ago, he'd come home to find Sarah on the kitchen floor, blood pooling around her head. Hunter had been lying beside her, severely injured but still trying to rouse her with gentle nudges of his muzzle. The intruder was long gone, but Jack's grief had needed a target. Hunter had been it. "You were supposed to protect her," he'd screamed at the wounded dog. Now, with Emma missing, the old accusation hung between them. The ringing of Jack's phone broke the moment. It was Agent Reynolds. "We found Emma's backpack by Miller's Creek," she said without preamble. "There are signs of a struggle." Jack's world narrowed to a pinpoint of terror. "I'll be right there." When he turned around, Hunter was gone, the front door left ajar in Jack's haste to answer the phone. Dr. Andrews arrived at the Mitchell house just after dawn, responding to Jack's frantic call about Hunter's disappearance. "He's probably trying to find Emma," she said, her voice professionally soothing as she stood in the living room. "German shepherds are incredibly loyal, especially to children they've bonded with. He's the only thing Emma has left of her mother," Jack said, running a hand through his hair. "Sarah trained him before—" He stopped, unable to finish. Dr. Andrews placed a hand on Jack's arm. "I know. Sarah was one of my first clients when I moved here. She was so proud of Hunter's training." Jack looked up sharply. "You knew Sarah, just professionally," Dr. Andrews said quickly. "She brought Hunter in for his vaccination shortly before. Well, before it happened." Something about her tone made Jack uncomfortable. But before he could pursue it, Sheriff Cooper arrived with news. "We've got Thomas Blackwood organizing volunteers at the community center," Cooper announced. "Best tracker in 3 counties is joining the search." Blackwood. Jack frowned. "Emma doesn't even like him. Says he watches her too closely at the youth center." Cooper's expression hardened. "Thomas Blackwood has done more for this town than anyone. His search coordination found those missing Anderson twins last year." "After 3 days," Jack muttered. "They nearly died of exposure." "You want to find your daughter or argue about Blackwood?" Cooper snapped. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of search parties, police interviews, and increasing desperation. The community response was mixed. Many rallied to help find Emma, while others whispered that Jack's drinking had something to do with her disappearance. A few even suggested that Hunter, with his mysterious past and protective behavior, might have harmed Emma himself. "That dog always seemed off to me," Jack overheard Mrs. Peterson telling another volunteer. "Too intense. Not right for a child." "I heard Mitchell beat that dog," came the reply. "Wouldn't surprise me if it finally snapped." The rumors cut deeper than Jack expected. He knew he hadn't been a perfect owner to Hunter, especially in the dark days after Sarah's death. But Hunter had never shown aggression toward Emma, quite the opposite. The dog slept outside her door every night, followed her everywhere, seemed to understand her moods better than Jack himself did. On the 3rd day, with hope fading, Jack found himself face to face with Thomas Blackwood at the search command post. "We're doing everything we can, Jack," Blackwood said, his hand squeezing Jack's shoulder a moment too long. "I feel personally responsible. Emma is such a special little girl." "How would you know?" Jack asked, pulling away from Blackwood's touch. "You barely know her." Something flickered in Blackwood's eyes, a hardness quickly concealed. "I know all the children in my programs, and I was close with Sarah. She would want me to help." Before Jack could respond, his phone rang the veterinary clinic. "Mr. Mitchell?" The receptionist's voice trembled. You need to come to the clinic immediately. It's about Hunter. Hunter, you found him? No, sir. He's here. And sir, her voice broke, he's covered in blood. Hunter had left the Mitchell house with a single purpose: find Emma. The German Shepherd's military training, instilled years before Sarah adopted him from the Veterans Service Dog Program, had kicked in the moment he caught Emma's scent near the school. While humans shouted and searched in organized grids, Hunter followed an invisible trail that only his keen senses could detect. The first night, he tracked Emma's scent through Miller's Creek and into the dense forest that bordered the eastern edge of Oak Ridge. The trail was contaminated with other smells: men's cologne, cigarette smoke, and something chemical that burned Hunter's sensitive nose. But underneath it all was Emma's distinct scent, tinged with fear. By dawn, Hunter had covered nearly 15 miles of rough terrain, his paws bleeding on the rocky ground. He paused only long enough to drink from streams, pushing his body well beyond normal endurance. The distant sound of vehicles occasionally reached him, but Hunter stayed hidden, instinctively avoiding the humans who might stop his search. The trail led deeper into the Blue Ridge foothills, to an area locals called Devil's Backbone, a remote section of forest with limestone caves and abandoned mining equipment. Here, Emma's scent grew stronger, mixed with the smells of multiple humans and the metallic tang of weapons. Hunter slowed his approach, decades of canine evolution and specialized training merging into perfect stealth. The sun was setting on his second day away from home when he spotted the camouflaged entrance to an underground bunker, cleverly disguised beneath fallen logs and native vegetation. 2 armed men patrolled the perimeter, speaking in low voices as they smoked cigarettes. "Blackwood wants her moved tonight," one said, exhaling a cloud of smoke. "Says the search is getting too close." "Pain in the ass," the other replied. "Kid hasn't stopped crying since yesterday." Hunter's muscles tensed at the mention of a child. He circled downwind, finding a secondary entrance, a ventilation shaft poorly concealed behind a boulder. The opening was barely large enough for his muscular body, but Hunter squeezed through, ignoring the pain as his healing wounds reopened against the rough concrete. Inside, the bunker was a maze of narrow corridors lit by bare bulbs. Hunter followed Emma's scent to a heavy metal door. Behind it, he could hear soft, hiccuping sobs that he recognized immediately. Emma was alive. The door had no handle on Hunter's side, only a small gap at the bottom not large enough for him to squeeze through. Hunter lay down, pressing his muzzle to the gap. "Hunter." Emma's voice was hoarse from crying. "Hunter, is that you?" The soft whine he gave in response was followed by the sound of Emma scrambling toward the door. "I knew you'd find me," she whispered, her small fingers appearing in the gap, touching his nose. "They're going to move me tonight. There's a man here. He smells like the man who hurt Mom." Hunter's entire body went rigid. The scent memory of Sarah's killer had been locked in his brain for 5 years, the same cologne he'd detected on Emma's trail. "I need to get out of here," Emma continued, her voice steadier now that Hunter had arrived. "There's a window, but it's too high for me to reach." Hunter backed away from the door as heavy footsteps approached. He slipped into a shadowy alcove just as a man entered the corridor. Even before seeing him, Hunter recognized the scent, one of the guards from outside. The man unlocked Emma's door, carrying a tray of food. "Dinner time, princess," he said mockingly. "Eat up. You got a long trip tonight." The moment the door opened wide enough, Hunter launched himself at the guard, a blur of fur and muscle. The man had no time to react before powerful jaws clamped around his arm, forcing him to drop the tray with a clatter. He screamed, reaching for the gun at his hip, but Hunter was faster, knocking him off balance. "Hunter!" Emma cried, darting past the struggling pair. The guard's shouts brought the sound of running footsteps. Hunter released the man's arm and turned to Emma, nudging her urgently toward a side passage. "This way," she whispered, leading him toward the window she'd mentioned. The room was small, with a narrow window near the ceiling. Without hesitation, Hunter positioned himself beneath it, looking at Emma meaningfully. "You want me to climb on you?" she asked, understanding immediately. Hunter stood perfectly still as the 8-year-old climbed onto his back and then his shoulders, reaching for the window ledge. With a grunt of effort, Emma pulled herself up, pushing against the glass. It opened outward, just wide enough for her small body to squeeze through. "Come on, Hunter," she called from outside. "But the window is too small for the shepherd." Hunter barked once, softly, as heavy boots thundered down the corridor toward them. "You can't fit," Emma realized, her face reappearing in the window. "I won't leave you." Hunter barked again, more insistently. In the narrow confines of the bunker, he could hear men shouting, organizing a search. They had minutes, perhaps seconds. Emma's face disappeared, then returned. "I'll find help, I promise." Hunter watched her go, then turned to face the corridor. If he couldn't escape with her, he would buy her time. The first guard who rounded the corner met 80 pounds of determined German shepherd. Hunter fought with the calculated precision of his military training, disabling rather than killing, creating chaos in the narrow space where the men's numbers worked against them. A gunshot rang out, the bullet grazing Hunter's shoulder. The sharp pain only intensified his focus. He broke free from the tangle of men and raced through the bunker, leading the pursuit away from Emma's escape route. Outside, Emma had made it 20 yards into the forest when she heard the gunshot. She froze, torn between running for help and returning for Hunter. Before she could decide, a familiar voice called her name. "Emma, Emma Mitchell." Dr. Andrews emerged from between the trees, her veterinary bag in hand. "Dr. Andrews," Emma cried. "Hunter found me. But he's still inside with the bad men." The veterinarian's face showed momentary surprise before settling into professional calm. "Are you hurt?" "Emma, no, but Hunter will be. We have to help him." Dr. Andrews knelt beside Emma, opening her bag. "We will. But first, let me check you over." "There's no time," Emma protested. "Just a quick check." Dr. Andrews insisted, pulling out what looked like a stethoscope. "Your father would want me to make sure you're okay." As the doctor leaned forward, Emma caught a whiff of familiar cologne, the same scent she'd detected on one of her captors, the same scent that had lingered in their house the night her mother died. Emma backpedaled quickly. "You're with them." Dr. Andrews' expression hardened. "Don't be ridiculous. Emma, You're confused and frightened. You smell like him, like the man who hurt my mom. Emma continued, backing away. Hunter knew. That's why he always growled at you. Emma, come here now. Dr. Andrews' voice lost its professional warmth, taking on a commanding edge. Emma turned to run, but the veterinarian was faster, grabbing her arm with surprising strength. Thomas won't be happy if I lose you now. Thomas, Mr. Blackwood. Emma's eyes widened in realization. Before Dr. Andrews could respond, a blood-covered shape exploded from the bunker entrance. Hunter, limping but determined, charged toward them. Dr. Andrews released Emma to reach for something in her bag, but she wasn't quick enough. Hunter slammed into her, knocking her to the ground. Run, Emma! A man's voice shouted from the trees. Jack Mitchell burst into the clearing, followed by Agent Reynolds and 2 other FBI agents. The scene they encountered seemed unreal. Hunter standing protectively over Emma, growling at Dr. Andrews, who lay stunned on the forest floor. Daddy! Emma cried, running to her father. Jack swept her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you? No. Emma sobbed into his shoulder. Hunter found me. He fought the bad men. Agent Reynolds approached cautiously, her gun trained on Dr. Andrews. Sarah Andrews, you're under arrest. The veterinarian's laugh was cold and entirely unlike her professional demeanor. You have no idea what you're dealing with. As if summoned by her words, gunfire erupted from the bunker entrance. The FBI agents returned fire, creating a chaotic crossfire. Jack pulled Emma behind a large tree, while Hunter limped to their side. We need to move, Jack whispered to Emma. Can you run? Emma nodded, but her eyes were fixed on Hunter. The shepherd's white and tan coat was matted with blood, his breathing labored. Hunter's hurt bad. Daddy. I know, sweetheart. Jack looked at the dog that had saved his daughter, the dog he had blamed and abandoned years ago. But he found you when no one else could. In the confusion of the gunfight, Dr. Andrews vanished into the forest. Agent Reynolds signaled for Jack to retreat with Emma while they secured the area. The access road is 1/2 mile east, she told him. There's a backup team waiting. Get Emma to safety. Jack nodded, lifting Emma into his arms despite her protests about Hunter. He'll follow us, Jack assured her, though he wasn't certain the injured dog could make it much farther. They had covered perhaps a 1/4 mile when Emma squirmed out of her father's arms. Hunter can't keep up. Daddy. He's bleeding too much. It was true. The shepherd had fallen behind, each step clearly agonizing. Jack made a split-second decision that would have been unthinkable 3 days earlier. He handed Emma his jacket. Wrap this around your shoulders. I'm going to carry Hunter. You can carry him. Emma's eyes widened. He found you when I couldn't. Jack said simply, I owe him everything. Jack approached Hunter slowly, expecting resistance from the injured animal. Instead, Hunter looked at him with an exhausted trust that cut straight to Jack's heart. With careful movements, Jack lifted the 80-pound dog, grunting under the weight. You're heavier than you look, buddy, he murmured. With Emma leading the way, they continued toward the access road, Hunter's blood soaked through Jack's shirt. warm and sticky against his skin. The dog's breathing grew more labored with each passing minute. "Stay with us, Hunter," Jack found himself whispering. "Emma needs you. I need you." By the time they reached the access road, Hunter was barely conscious. The FBI team waiting there immediately radioed for veterinary support, but the nearest animal hospital was 40 minutes away. "He's not going to make it that long," one agent said quietly to his colleague. Emma, overhearing, suddenly straightened her shoulders. "Yes, he will." She approached Hunter where Jack had gently laid him on a blanket. "Mom taught me what to do when Hunter got hurt in training." With surprising competence for an 8-year-old, Emma directed the agents to help apply pressure bandages to Hunter's worst wounds. "He saved me," she told them fiercely. "Now we save him." As they worked, Hunter's eyes remained fixed on Emma, his tail thumping weakly against the blanket. For the first time in 5 years, Jack recognized the expression in the dog's eyes, not just loyalty or duty, but love. The hospital waiting room had become Jack Mitchell's world for the past 36 hours. Across the hallway, in the adjacent veterinary care center attached to Oak Ridge Memorial, Hunter fought for his life under the care of a trauma specialist flown in from Richmond. Emma, after being treated for dehydration and minor cuts, had refused to be separated from either her father or her dog. The hospital staff, moved by their story, had bent rules to allow her to shuttle between her father's side and Hunter's recovery kennel. "He's still sleeping," Emma reported, returning from her hourly visit to Hunter. Her small face was drawn with worry beyond her years. "The doctor says his body temperature is still too low." Jack pulled his daughter onto his lap, something he hadn't done since she was much younger. Emma's fragility reminded him how close he'd come to losing her forever. "Hunter's tough," he said, trying to inject confidence into his voice. "If he made it through the surgery, he'll make it through this." Emma nodded against his shoulder. "He knew, Daddy. He knew who took me. The same people who hurt Mom." Jack stiffened, looking down at his daughter's serious face. They hadn't yet discussed what she'd experienced during her captivity. The FBI insisting that trained child psychologists should be present for any detailed questioning. But this connection to Sarah's unsolved murder was something Jack hadn't anticipated. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "The cologne," Emma said simply. "Mr. Blackwood wears the same cologne as the man who was in our house that night. Hunter recognized it too. That's why he always growled when Mr. Blackwood came near me at the youth center." Jack's blood ran cold. Thomas Blackwood had been one of the first people to console him after Sarah's death, had organized the community support that kept Jack functioning in those early days. The same Thomas Blackwood who had been mysteriously absent when Hunter appeared with Emma at the police station. Before Jack could process this revelation, Agent Reynolds appeared in the waiting room doorway, her expression grave but determined. Though she'd taken a bullet to the shoulder during the bunker raid, she had refused medical leave, her arm now supported by a simple sling. "We need to talk, Jack," she said quietly. "Alone." Jack hesitated, unwilling to let Emma out of his sight, understanding his reluctance. Reynolds nodded toward a nurse. "Nancy here will stay with Emma. We'll be right outside the door." Once in the hallway, Reynolds didn't waste time. "We've been digging into Blackwood's operation. It's bigger than we thought, a trafficking network extending up and down the East Coast, using the youth programs as recruitment and surveillance. Sarah Andrews was his partner. both professionally and romantically. She established veterinary practices in each town where they operated. But why? Jack asked, struggling to connect the pieces. Why Emma? Why my family? Reynolds's expression softened slightly. We found Sarah's research files hidden in Andrew's clinic. Your wife was an investigative journalist. Jack. She was building a case against Blackwood. She'd discovered children going missing from his programs. Traced it back to him. The revelation hit Jack like a physical blow. Sarah had told him she was working on a big story, but had kept the details vague, claiming it was standard practice until she had concrete evidence. He'd been so consumed with his construction business, so confident in their safe, small-town life, that he hadn't pushed for more information. Sarah was killed because she was close to exposing them, Reynolds continued. But she hid her evidence somewhere they couldn't find it. They've been watching your family ever since, believing you might know where it is. I don't, Jack said helplessly. She never told me. No, but she might have left clues that only you would recognize. Blackwood and Andrews took Emma to pressure you, but also because Emma might innocently know something. Jack leaned against the wall, memories flooding back Sarah's late nights at her computer, her sudden interest in Blackwood's youth programs, her insistence that Hunter undergo additional protection training. Hunter, he said suddenly. Sarah spent extra time training Hunter right before she died. She was teaching him some new command that she wouldn't explain. Reynolds's eyes sharpened. That could be significant. German shepherds have been used to carry messages, even small items, in war zones, special forces sometimes. She was interrupted by Emma's sudden appearance in the doorway, her face alight with excitement. Hunter's awake. He's trying to stand up. Jack and Reynolds exchanged a quick glance before following Emma to the veterinary wing, inside Hunter's recovery kennel. The shepherd was indeed struggling to rise, despite the IV lines and bandages covering much of his body. The attending veterinarian, Dr. Patel, was trying unsuccessfully to calm him. He'll tear his stitches, Dr. Patel warned as they entered. I can sedate him, but given his blood loss, I'd rather not. Let me try, Emma said, slipping past the adults to kneel beside Hunter's bed, at Emma's voice. Hunter immediately stopped struggling, his amber eyes fixing on her face. His tail thumped weakly against the blanket. It's okay, boy, Emma soothed, gently stroking the uninjured side of his head. We're safe now. You can rest. Hunter whined softly, still trying to communicate something with an urgency that seemed at odds with his physical state. He's been like this since he woke up. Doctor, Patel explained. It's almost like he's trying to tell us something. Agent Reynolds studied the dog thoughtfully. Jack, you mentioned a special command Sarah was teaching him. Do you remember anything about it? Jack shook his head. Just that it had a weird name, something about secrets or hiding. Emma looked up suddenly. Treasure? Was it Find the Treasure Mom used to play that game with Hunter and me? She'd hide things and tell Hunter to find the treasure. Jack stared at his daughter in surprise. Yes, that sounds right. I'd forgotten. Should we try it? Reynolds asked. See if he responds. Jack hesitated, not wanting to agitate Hunter further, but Emma was already leaning closer to the dog. Hunter, she said clearly, find the treasure. The effect was immediate. Hunter's ears pricked forward and he tried again to stand, whining with greater intensity. He knows the command, Reynolds said. "But he can't show us in his condition." Dr. Patel checked Hunter's vitals with a frown. "His heart rate is elevated. This excitement isn't good for him right now." Jack made a decision. "Emma, tell him treasure later. Your mom always used that when she wanted to postpone the game." Emma nodded, placing her small hand on Hunter's paw. "Treasure later. Hunter, when you're stronger, I promise." The shepherd resisted for a moment, then gradually relaxed, though his eyes remained alert and focused on Emma. "Whatever this treasure is," Reynolds said quietly to Jack, "it's clearly important to him. And if Sarah trained him to respond to that command right before her murder, it could be the evidence she collected," Jack finished. "But where would she hide it?" The question haunted Jack over the next few days as Emma divided her time between her hospital room and Hunter's kennel. The shepherd's physical recovery was remarkable a testament, Dr. Patel said, to his exceptional breeding and training. By the fourth day, Hunter was able to stand and walk short distances, though his movements were stiff and careful. Meanwhile, the FBI's investigation continued. Thomas Blackwood had disappeared, along with Dr. Andrews and several other associates. Raids on Blackwood's properties had uncovered evidence of trafficking operations, but nothing that directly linked him to Sarah's murder or Emma's kidnapping. The men captured at the bunker were low-level enforcers who claimed to have been hired through intermediaries. "We need a direct connection," Reynolds admitted during a private meeting in Jack's hospital room. "Something that puts Blackwood at the scene of your wife's murder or explicitly ordering Emma's abduction." "And you think this treasure might be it?" Jack asked. "It's our best lead. Sarah was meticulous, according to her editor. If she had evidence, she would have preserved it carefully." Jack ran a hand through his hair, frustration building. "But I've been through everything of Sarah's. After she died, I packed up her office, her clothes, everything. There was nothing unusual." "Maybe it's not something obvious," Reynolds suggested. "Not a file or a recording, but something only Hunter would recognize as important." Their conversation was interrupted by a nurse bringing Emma back from her visit with Hunter. The little girl seemed more animated than she had been since her rescue. "Hunter tried to follow me when I left," she reported proudly. "Dr. Patel says he's healing faster than any dog she's ever seen." "That's great, sweetheart," Jack said, forcing a smile. "Maybe tomorrow we can take him for a short walk." Emma's eyes lit up. "Outside? Like a real walk?" "Just around the hospital grounds," Jack clarified. "He's still recovering." Emma's excitement was contagious, momentarily lifting the weight of uncertainty that had settled over them. Later that evening, when Emma had fallen asleep in the recliner beside Jack's hospital bed, Reynolds returned with news. "We've got a lead on Blackwood," she said in a low voice, careful not to wake Emma. "A cabin in the mountains, about 50 miles west. We're organizing a raid for tomorrow morning." "I want to be there," Jack said immediately. Reynolds shook her head. "Too dangerous. Besides, you need to stay with Emma. We don't know if Blackwood has other associates in the area who might try to get to her again." Jack knew she was right, but the thought of remaining sidelined while his wife's killer was brought to justice was almost unbearable. He glanced at Emma's sleeping form, reminding himself that her safety had to come first. "There's something else," Reynolds added, her voice even lower. "We've been reviewing the security footage from the police station when Hunter arrived with Emma. There's something strange about his collar. His collar Jack repeated, confused. It looks different from earlier photos we have. Thicker, somehow. We think there might be something inside or attached to it. Jack tried to remember Hunter's collar. The dog had been wearing the same simple leather collar for years, ever since Sarah had bought it for him. It was unremarkable, worn with age. I never noticed anything unusual about it. Dr. Patel removed it during surgery. It's being kept with Hunter's other belongings. First thing tomorrow, we'd like to examine it more closely. Jack nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. Could Sarah have hidden something in or on Hunter's collar? Something the dog had been carrying all these years without anyone noticing. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Emma was officially discharged. Though Jack convinced the hospital to let them stay close to Hunter, the shepherd was deemed well enough for a short outdoor walk, which Emma anticipated with the first genuine excitement she'd shown since her ordeal, while Emma helped Dr. Patel prepare Hunter for his walk. Agent Reynolds and a forensic technician examined the collar in a small conference room. "There's definitely something embedded in the leather," the technician confirmed, running a scanner over the collar. "It's thin, approximately 1 inch by ½ inch, possibly a microchip or small data storage device." "Can you extract it without damaging it?" Reynolds asked. "Yes, but it will destroy the collar." Jack stared at the worn leather in the technician's gloved hands. Do it. If Sarah hid something there, she must have had a good reason. The extraction was delicate work. The technician carefully cut along the inner lining of the collar, revealing a thin plastic case sealed with waterproof material. Inside was a micro SD card, no larger than Jack's fingernail. Jackpot. Reynolds breathed, carefully placing the tiny card into an evidence bag. "We'll need to get this to our lab right away." Before they could continue, Emma appeared in the doorway, her face flushed with excitement. "We're ready for Hunter's walk, Doctor. Patel says we can go to the garden." Jack looked questioningly at Reynolds, who nodded. "Go ahead. I'll handle this and update you as soon as we know something." The hospital's small healing garden was empty that morning, giving Hunter space to move at his own cautious pace, despite his injuries. The shepherd carried himself with dignity, staying close to Emma's side as they walked slowly along the paved paths. "He's looking for something," Emma observed as Hunter paused, sniffing the air. "See how his ears are." Jack watched the dog's alert posture, remembering how he'd once admired Hunter's intelligence and intuition before grief had blinded him. "He's always aware of his surroundings. Your mom said he could detect things most humans miss." Emma nodded seriously. "Mom said he was special. That's why she picked him from all the other dogs." "She told you about that?" Jack asked, surprised. Emma had been so young when Sarah died. "She told me lots of things about Hunter, how he was a hero dog before she adopted him, how he could keep secrets." Jack crouched down to Emma's level, suddenly intent. "Secrets? What do you mean?" Emma shrugged. "Just that Hunter knew how to keep secrets. That's why she taught him the treasure game. She said sometimes important things need to be hidden, where only the right people can find them." The pieces were starting to come together in Jack's mind. Sarah hadn't just been training Hunter for protection, she'd been preparing a backup plan, using the dog as a living safe deposit box for her evidence. "Emma, did Mom ever show you where Hunter's treasures were hidden?" Emma's brow furrowed in concentration. Sometimes in her special box, sometimes in her books. Once she put it in Hunter's bed. Jack was about to ask another question when Hunter suddenly stiffened, a low growl building in his throat. The shepherd moved in front of Emma, his body language shifting from relaxed to alert in an instant. "What is it, boy?" Jack asked, instinctively scanning the garden. At first he saw nothing unusual, just the empty paths, flowering shrubs, and a maintenance worker near the far gate. Then Jack noticed what had triggered Hunter's response. The worker was wearing a distinctive cologne, its scent carried on the morning breeze. "Emma, we're going inside now," Jack said calmly, taking her hand. "But we just got out here," she protested. "Now, Emma." Jack's tone left no room for argument. As they turned toward the hospital doors, the maintenance worker abandoned all pretense, dropping his rake and reaching inside his jacket. Hunter's growl became a snarl as he positioned himself between the threat and his family. "Mr. Mitchell," the man called, his hand emerging with a small pistol. "I just need to talk to you about that collar." Jack pushed Emma behind him. "Run inside, Emma. Find Dr. Patel." "But Hunter—" "Now!" Jack shouted, as the man began walking toward them. Emma darted for the hospital doors as Jack faced the gunman. Hunter, despite his injuries, stood his ground beside Jack, teeth bared. "The boss just wants what belongs to him," the man said, keeping the gun low, partially concealed from anyone who might look out the hospital windows. "Tell me where the microchip is, and this ends quietly." "It's already with the FBI," Jack replied, slowly backing toward the doors. "You're too late." The man's expression hardened. "Then I guess the boss will want to send a message instead." He raised the gun, aiming not at Jack, but at Hunter. In the split second before he could fire, Jack lunged forward, tackling the gunman. The pistol discharged with a muffled pop, the bullet striking the ground as both men fell. Jack had the advantage of size and desperation, but the gunman was trained and vicious. They struggled on the garden path, Jack feeling a rib crack as the man drove a knee into his side. The gun had skittered away in their initial collision, lying just out of reach. Through the haze of pain, Jack was dimly aware of Hunter circling them, looking for an opening. The shepherd was injured, in no condition for a fight, but his protective instincts had taken over. "Stay back! Hunter!" Jack gasped, as the gunman's elbow connected with his jaw. The shepherd ignored the command, seizing the moment when the gunman reached for the fallen pistol. Hunter's jaws closed around the man's wrist with calculated pressure, not the killing force he was capable of, but enough to immobilize. The gunman screamed, his fingers releasing the gun as Hunter held him pinned. Jack scrambled to secure the weapon, pointing it at their attacker with shaking hands. "Good boy. Hunter," he managed, tasting blood from his split lip. Security guards burst into the garden, followed by Agent Reynolds with her weapon drawn. Within moments, the gunman was handcuffed and being led away, his injured wrist bandaged. "Are you all right?" Reynolds asked Jack, helping him to his feet. "Been better," Jack admitted, wincing as he straightened. "But we're alive. Thanks to Hunter." The shepherd had collapsed onto the path, the exertion of the fight clearly depleting his limited reserves. Jack knelt beside him, gently running a hand over Hunter's head. "You never stop protecting us, do you?" he whispered. Hunter's tail thumped weakly against the ground, his eyes fixed on Jack with what could only be described as devotion. The man was one of Blackwood's security personnel. Reynolds informed Jack as medical staff arrived to check Hunter. "We've identified him from company photos. This is the direct link we needed Blackwood sending armed men after you." Jack nodded, but his attention remained on Hunter as the veterinary team carefully lifted the shepherd onto a gurney. "Will he be okay?" he asked Dr. Patel anxiously. "He's reopened some stitches, but nothing life-threatening," she assured him. "He's remarkably resilient." As they wheeled Hunter back inside, Emma broke away from a nurse and ran to her father, throwing her arms around him. "You're hurt," she cried. "Seeing the blood on his face?" "Just scratches," Jack assured her, holding her close. "Hunter saved us again." Emma looked at the shepherd on the gurney, her expression solemn beyond her years. "He always does. Mom said he would." Over Emma's head, Jack met Reynolds's gaze. "Any word on the microchip?" The agent nodded, a hint of triumph in her eyes. "Our tech team just called. The chip contains files, photos, recordings, everything needed to prove Blackwood's involvement in multiple kidnappings and Sarah's murder. Your wife documented everything." Relief washed over Jack, so intense it made his knees weak. "So it's over?" "Almost," Reynolds replied. "We still need to find Blackwood and Andrews. The raid on the cabin is happening now. I'll update you as soon as I hear anything." As they followed Hunter's gurney back to the veterinary wing, Jack felt a strange lightness despite his injuries. For 5 years, he had lived with the weight of Sarah's unsolved murder, had misdirected his grief and anger at the very creature who had tried to save her. Now, with Hunter's help, they were finally close to justice. Emma slipped her small hand into Jack's as they walked. "Daddy, when Hunter's better, can we take him home? Our real home?" Jack looked down at his daughter, seeing Sarah's determination in her eyes. Their house had become little more than a shrine to loss these past years, a place where Jack retreated into bottles and Emma into silence. "Yes," he said, making a promise to both of them. "It's time we all went home." The cabin raid had gone disastrously wrong. Agent Reynolds delivered the news to Jack personally that evening, her expression grim as they stood outside Hunter's recovery kennel. Inside, Emma slept curled next to the shepherd, her small hand resting on his uninjured flank. "Blackwood was tipped off," Reynolds said quietly. "The cabin was rigged with explosives. We lost 2 agents, 3 more injured." Jack felt sick. More deaths laid at Blackwood's feet, more families shattered like his own had been. "Any sign of where he went?" "None. He's gone completely dark. Same with Andrews." Reynolds rubbed her injured shoulder absently. "But we've put together the full picture from Sarah's evidence. Blackwood has been operating a network of child trafficking for over a decade, using his youth programs and charitable foundation as cover. Your wife stumbled onto it while researching a story on missing children, and no one believed her," Jack said bitterly. Reynolds nodded. "Small towns, respected community figure, charitable work. Blackwood cultivated the perfect cover. Sarah was smart enough to gather evidence carefully before making accusations, but not careful enough to protect herself," Jack whispered, watching Emma sleep. "She protected the evidence," Reynolds reminded him. "And she made sure Hunter would guard it and Emma if anything happened to her. The realization that Sarah had anticipated her own murder had trained Hunter as a fail-safe, sent a wave of grief through Jack so powerful he had to lean against the wall. For 5 years, he'd blamed the dog for not saving his wife, when all along Hunter had been completing the mission Sarah had given him, protecting Emma and the evidence that would eventually expose her killers. "We're moving you all to a safe house tonight," Reynolds continued. "Until Blackwood is apprehended, you and Emma remain primary targets." Jack looked at Hunter, still connected to IV fluids. "Hunter, too. We're not leaving him behind." "Already arranged. Dr. Patel will accompany you to manage his care." Reynolds checked her watch. "The transport team will be here in an hour. Pack only essentials." The safe house was a modest farmhouse 30 miles outside Oak Ridge, nestled in rolling countryside with clear sight lines in all directions. FBI agents patrolled the perimeter, while inside, Dr. Patel set up a makeshift recovery space for Hunter in the living room. The shepherd seemed to improve simply by having Jack and Emma constantly nearby, his amber eyes tracking their movements with alert awareness. By morning, Emma had established a new routine, solemnly helping Dr. Shishta Patel change Hunter's bandages and administer medications. Jack watched his daughter's careful hands, her quiet concentration, and saw Sarah in every movement. "She would have been a veterinarian," Dr. Patel observed, following Jack's gaze. "She has the touch." "Her mother wanted her to be a journalist," Jack replied, memories surfacing of Sarah's delight when Emma wrote her first stories. "Fearless truth-teller, she called her." Dr. Patel smiled. "Perhaps both. Animal doctor by day, investigative reporter by night." The light-hearted moment was broken by Agent Reynolds's arrival. Her expression told Jack everything before she spoke a word. "Blackwood's made contact," she said once they were alone in the kitchen. "He's offering a trade the original evidence for Emma's safety." "He knows we have the microchip," Jack said, feeling cold dread settle in his stomach. "Yes, but he claims Sarah kept physical backups, notebooks, photographs, original recordings. He believes you know where they are." Jack shook his head in frustration. "I've told you. I've been through everything of Sarah's. There were no hidden files, no secret compartments. I would have found them." Reynolds leaned closer. "Would you? You've admitted you were drinking heavily after Sarah's death, that you packed away her things in a fog of grief." The accusation stung because it held truth. Those early months were a blur of alcohol and rage. He'd boxed up Sarah's office in a single afternoon, unable to bear the sight of her things, her presence that wasn't a presence anymore. "Even if there are originals," Jack said, "I would never trade anything for Emma's safety, not even justice for Sarah." "We're not considering his offer," Reynolds assured him, "but it gives us an opportunity. He's agreed to a meeting, just you, at a location of his choosing. A trap, of course, but one we can use to finally catch him." Reynolds pulled out a folder containing surveillance photos. "We'll wire you. Have tactical teams in position. When he shows, we take him." Jack studied the photos Blackwood at various community events. Always the picture of respectability. In one, Jack himself stood beside him at a fundraiser for the youth center, both smiling at the camera. The sight of his arm around Sarah's killer made Jack's stomach turn. "I'll do it," he said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes to end this." Reynolds nodded, unsurprised. The meeting is set for tomorrow night. That gives us time to prepare." After she left, Jack stood in the farmhouse kitchen, staring out at the agents patrolling the property. Could Sarah really have hidden physical evidence somewhere in their house? Somewhere he had overlooked for 5 years? "Daddy?" Emma's voice pulled him from his thoughts. She stood in the doorway, Hunter beside her, the shepherd moving stiffly but steadily. "Hey, sweetheart, Hunter's looking stronger today." Emma nodded, coming to stand beside him at the window. "He wants to go outside. Dr. Patel says it's okay for a little while." Jack hesitated, eyeing the open fields around the farmhouse. "Let me check with the agents first." Once clearance was given, they walked slowly around the farmhouse yard, Hunter moving with increasing confidence despite his injuries. Emma kept one hand lightly on the shepherd's back, more for her comfort than his support. "Mom used to take Hunter to the pond behind our house," she said suddenly. "Just the two of them, early in the morning before you woke up." Jack looked at his daughter in surprise. "I didn't know that." Emma nodded. "They had special training time. Mom said it was their secret." She glanced up at him. "I followed them once. Mom showed Hunter how to find things in the water. She'd throw something in and tell him find the treasure, and he'd swim out and dive down to get it." Jack's heart began to race. "In the water? Are you sure?" "Uh-huh. She said Hunter was special because most dogs just look on the surface, but he could find things hidden underneath." Jack crouched down to Emma's level, trying to keep his voice casual. "Did Mom ever hide anything else at the pond? Something important?" Emma's brow furrowed in concentration. "I don't think so. But—" she trailed off, looking at Hunter. "Hunter would know. He remembers everything Mom taught him." As if understanding their conversation, Hunter's ears pricked forward, his gaze intensifying at the mention of Sarah. Jack made a split-second decision. "Emma, I need to make a phone call. Stay here with Dr. Patel for a minute." Inside, he found Agent Reynolds already on her way out, responding to a development in the case. "I need to go back to my house," Jack said without preamble. "The evidence Blackwood wants, I think I know where Sarah might have hidden it." Reynolds looked skeptical. "Where?" "In our pond. Emma just told me Sarah used to train Hunter to retrieve objects from underwater." The more Jack considered it, the more certain he became. "It's perfect waterproof, hidden from casual searchers, accessible only to someone who knows exactly where to look or has a specially trained dog." "It's too dangerous," Reynolds said immediately. "Blackwood could have your property under surveillance." "Then provide backup. But I need to check, and I need Hunter with me." Reynolds studied him for a long moment. "You're sure the dog can still perform this kind of task in his condition?" Jack looked through the window to where Hunter stood alert beside Emma. "That dog dragged himself 15 miles with bullets in him to save my daughter. If Sarah hid something in that pond, Hunter will find it." 2 hours later, under cover of early evening darkness, Jack found himself crouching at the edge of the small pond behind his house. The property had been secured by FBI agents, confirming it was clear of surveillance. Hunter stood beside him, tense with anticipation. While Emma waited in the car with Dr. Patel and 2 agents, "I feel ridiculous," Jack admitted to Reynolds, who knelt nearby. "What if there's nothing here?" "Then we're no worse off than before," she replied practically. But Emma was quite specific about this training. Jack took a deep breath and turned to Hunter. "Okay, boy, find the treasure." The command electrified the shepherd. Despite his injuries, Hunter waded into the pond without hesitation, swimming to the center where the water was deepest. There, he circled several times, then dove beneath the surface. "Can he really?" Reynolds began, but stopped as Hunter resurfaced. Something dark clutched in his mouth. The shepherd swam directly to Jack, clambering onto the bank to deposit a small waterproof case at his feet. Without waiting for acknowledgement, Hunter returned to the water, diving again and again, bringing up 4 more identical cases before finally sitting, exhausted but triumphant, beside his recovered treasure. "Unbelievable," Reynolds whispered, carefully opening the first case. Inside were perfectly preserved documents, photographs, and a small recording device, all protected from water and time. Each case contained different evidence, financial records linking Blackwood to shell companies used for trafficking, photographs of Blackwood with known criminals, and most damning, a micro-recorder with Sarah's voice narrating her discoveries. "This is everything we need," Reynolds said, her professional composure cracking with excitement. "This is the case of a lifetime." Jack barely heard her, transfixed by the sound of Sarah's voice emerging from the tiny speaker. Her last words, her final work, preserved by the very dog he had blamed for her death. "Hunter," he said hoarsely, reaching out to the wet shepherd. "Good boy. Good boy." Hunter pressed against Jack's side, his mission finally complete after 5 long years. The evidence recovery changed everything. Agent Reynolds canceled the planned meeting with Blackwood, unwilling to risk Jack's safety now that they had what they needed. Instead, a nationwide manhunt was launched, with Sarah's meticulously documented evidence splashed across every law enforcement agency in the country. Back at the safe house, Jack found himself at loose ends, the adrenaline of the pond discovery giving way to a strange emptiness. Emma had fallen asleep on the living room sofa, one arm draped over Hunter, who maintained his vigilant watch despite his obvious exhaustion. "You should rest too," Dr. Patel advised Jack, checking Hunter's bandages one last time for the night. "He's stable, but he pushed himself too hard at the pond. The next 24 hours will be critical for his recovery." Jack nodded, settling into an armchair beside the sofa. "I'll stay with them." Once Dr. Patel had retired to her room, Jack sat in the dim light, watching his daughter and the dog who had saved her, the dog he had abandoned and blamed for 5 years. The weight of his mistake pressed on him like a physical pain. "I'm sorry," he whispered to Hunter, not sure if the shepherd was still awake. "I was wrong about you. About everything." Hunter's eyes opened, regarding Jack with that unnerving intelligence. Slowly, painfully. The dog rose from his position beside Emma and moved to Jack's side, resting his head on Jack's knee. The simple gesture of forgiveness broke something in Jack. He buried his face in Hunter's fur, tears coming for the first time since Sarah's death. Not the angry, drunken weeping of his worst nights, but cleansing tears of grief finally confronted. "Thank you," he murmured against Hunter's neck, "for protecting her, for not giving up on us." Hunter remained still, allowing Jack his moment of catharsis. From the sofa, Emma stirred, watching through half-lidded eyes as her father and her dog formed a connection that should have existed years ago. The moment was shattered by the sound of breaking glass from the kitchen. Hunter's head snapped up, a low growl building in his throat. Jack immediately reached for Emma, pulling her from the sofa and behind the armchair. "Stay down," he whispered, fumbling for his phone to alert the agents outside. Before he could dial, the living room door swung open. Thomas Blackwood stood in the doorway, a gun in one hand and Dr. Sarah Andrews beside him, her veterinary bag clutched in white-knuckled fingers. "Hello, Jack," Blackwood said pleasantly, as if arriving for a dinner party. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Hunter positioned himself between the intruders and Jack and Emma, his hackles raised despite his injuries. Blackwood eyed the shepherd with calculated assessment. "Still protecting them, I see," he said to Hunter. "Just like you tried to protect Sarah. Loyal to the end, aren't you?" Jack's mind raced, trying to understand how Blackwood had penetrated the FBI perimeter, where the agents were, how he could protect Emma. "The evidence is already with the FBI," Jack said, trying to keep Blackwood's attention on him rather than Emma. "It's over, Thomas." Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Nothing's over until I say it is. Sarah learned that lesson. Now it seems I need to teach it to the rest of her family." He raised the gun, pointing it directly at Jack's chest. "Starting with you." Hunter's growl deepened into a sound Jack had never heard before, primal, ancient, a sound that spoke of millennia of wolves protecting their packs. Despite his injuries, the shepherd's muscles coiled with deadly intent. His focus fixed on Blackwood's weapon. "Call off your dog," Blackwood ordered, his confident facade slipping slightly as Hunter took a step forward. "Or I'll shoot him first." "Hunter, stay," Jack commanded, though it cost him greatly. He needed to buy time, to find a way out for Emma. "How did you get past the agents?" Blackwood's smile returned. "You mean the ones patrolling the perimeter? Amazing what a simple gas can do, odorless, tasteless. They're all taking a little nap. As for the ones inside," he glanced at Dr. Andrews, "Sarah has been very helpful, haven't you?" "Dear," Dr. Andrews wouldn't meet Jack's eyes. "I administered a sedative when I checked the agent in the back bedroom. The one by the front door got an injection when I went out for supplies." Jack felt sick. They had trusted the veterinarian completely, never suspecting she might be working with Blackwood all along. "You helped him kill my wife," he said, the realization striking like a physical blow. "I didn't kill Sarah," Andrews replied, her voice hollow. "I loved her too." "Sarah was recruiting her," Blackwood explained with perverse pleasure, "trying to turn her against me. But Sarah underestimated the bonds between Sarah and me." He placed his free hand possessively on Andrew's shoulder. 20 years of partnership isn't easily broken, is it? Sarah?" Andrews flinched at his touch but didn't pull away. "What do you want?" Jack asked, his arm tight around Emma, who stood trembling against him. "Originally, I wanted my evidence back," Blackwood said conversationally, as if discussing a business transaction. "But since that's apparently a lost cause, I'll settle for making sure none of you can testify against me." He gestured with the gun. "Starting with the girl," Jack moved to shield Emma completely, his body between her and the weapon. "You'll have to kill me first." "That's the plan," Blackwood agreed. "But I want you to watch your daughter die. Like I had to watch everything I built crumble because of your wife's meddling." His voice had lost its smooth veneer, raw hatred bleeding through. Hunter edged forward slightly. His movement so subtle Blackwood didn't notice, focused as he was on Jack's face. The shepherd's eyes never left the gun. "Your wife thought she was so clever," Blackwood continued, his need to gloat overwhelming his caution. "Volunteering at my youth centers, befriending me, all while gathering evidence. She actually made me believe she admired my work. She figured out you were trafficking children through your charities," Jack said, trying to keep him talking while looking for any opening. "Kids who wouldn't be missed, providing opportunities," Blackwood corrected. "Those children were going nowhere in these backwater towns. I gave them purpose. You sold them." Emma's small voice cut through the tension, her face appearing around Jack's protective stance. "Like the men were going to sell me." Blackwood's expression hardened. "Shut her up or I will." "It's true, though, isn't it?" Jack pressed, desperate to keep Blackwood's attention on him. "Sarah discovered you were selling children to the highest bidders. That's why you killed her." "I didn't plan to kill her," Blackwood snapped, the gun wavering slightly. "I just wanted the evidence. She wouldn't tell me where it was." "So you beat her to death in our kitchen," Jack said, old rage burning through his fear. "While our daughter slept upstairs." Andrews made a small, pained sound. "You said it was an accident," she whispered to Blackwood. "You said she fell." "She fell after I hit her," Blackwood replied impatiently. "Same difference." Hunter had moved another inch forward, a motion so controlled that the floorboards didn't even creak beneath his weight. Jack saw the shepherd's strategy with sudden clarity. He was positioning himself for a leap at Blackwood's gun arm. "That dog," Blackwood said suddenly, noticing Hunter's intent focus. "Always in the way. He attacked me that night, too. That's how he got that scar on his side, my knife. Should have finished him then." The revelation that Blackwood had been the one to injure Hunter during Sarah's murder was the final piece of the puzzle Jack had been missing for 5 years. Hunter hadn't failed to protect Sarah, he had fought for her, had been wounded trying to save her. "Sarah knew you might come after her," Jack said, a new understanding dawning. "That's why she trained Hunter to hide the evidence if anything happened to her. She knew he'd keep it safe until it was needed." "Smart woman," Blackwood acknowledged. "Too smart for her own good." He gestured with the gun toward the kitchen. "Now, we're going to finish this outside. Wouldn't want to make a mess in this nice safe house." "No," Jack said simply, planting his feet. Blackwood's expression darkened. "This isn't a negotiation. Move, or I shoot the girl where she stands." Before Jack could respond, "Doctor," Andrew suddenly stepped forward. "Thomas, no, this has gone too far." Blackwood turned to her, momentary confusion crossing his features. "Get back, Sarah. This doesn't concern you." "Killing a child concerns me," Andrews said, her voice gaining strength. "I helped you with your business because I believed what you told me, that we were helping these children find better lives. I looked the other way when you started selling them instead. I even helped you cover up Sarah's death because I believed it was an accident." Her eyes filled with tears. But I won't let you murder a little girl in front of her father." "You don't have a choice," Blackwood snarled, turning the gun toward Andrews. It was the opening Hunter had been waiting for. The shepherd launched himself at Blackwood with explosive force, targeting the arm holding the weapon. His jaws clamped around Blackwood's wrist just as the gun discharged. Dr. Andrews screamed, clutching her stomach as she crumpled to the floor. Blackwood struggled with Hunter, the shepherd's powerful jaws crushing bone despite his weakened state. The gun fell from Blackwood's useless fingers, skidding across the hardwood floor. Jack lunged for the weapon, shouting for Emma to run and hide. Before he could reach the gun, Blackwood managed to kick Hunter in the side, directly impacting his healing wounds. The shepherd yelped in pain, momentarily releasing his grip, freed from Hunter's attack. Blackwood dove for the gun, reaching it a split second before Jack. He rolled to his back, aiming wildly as Jack tackled him. The two men crashed into the coffee table, shattering it beneath their combined weight. "Daddy!" Emma screamed from the doorway, unable to follow Jack's order to run. Hunter, despite the agony of his reopened wounds, dragged himself toward the struggling men. Blood soaked his bandages, leaving a crimson trail across the floor, but determination drove him forward. Blackwood was smaller than Jack, but fought with the desperate strength of a cornered animal. He managed to bring the gun up, pressing it against Jack's chest as they grappled. "It's over. Mitchell," he gasped. Hunter gathered his remaining strength and lunged one final time, clamping his jaws on Blackwood's gun arm and dragging it sideways just as the weapon discharged. The bullet missed Jack, splintering the floorboards inches from his head. The effort proved too much for Hunter's battered body. The shepherd collapsed beside the struggling men, his breathing shallow, eyes fixed on Jack with fading awareness. "Hunter," Emma cried, running to the fallen dog despite the danger. Jack, seeing his daughter exposed, found new strength. He slammed Blackwood's arm against the floor repeatedly until the gun finally clattered free. With a roar of rage built over 5 years of grief, Jack delivered a crushing blow to Blackwood's face, rendering him unconscious. "Hunter, stay with us," Jack pleaded, crawling to where Emma knelt beside the shepherd. "Please, boy, stay with us." Hunter's once alert eyes were dimming, blood pooling beneath his body. The wounds from the bunker rescue, reopened and aggravated by his final protective lunge, were bleeding freely. His breathing came in shallow pants, each one seeming to require more effort than the last. "He's dying, Daddy," Emma sobbed, her small hands pressing futilely against Hunter's largest wound. "Please help him." Jack looked desperately around the room. Dr. Andrews lay motionless by the door, Blackwood unconscious on the floor. The FBI agents were incapacitated somewhere outside. There was no help coming. "Hunter," Jack said, his voice breaking as he gently lifted the shepherd's head. "You did it, boy. You saved us. You kept your promise to Sarah." Hunter's tail thumped weakly against the floor, a final acknowledgement. His eyes, fixed on Emma's face, held such human-like understanding that Jack felt his heart breaking all over again. "I'm sorry," Jack whispered, stroking the dog's head. "I'm so sorry I blamed you. You were trying to save her." Hunter summoned the strength to lick Emma's hand once before his eyes slowly closed, his massive body going still beneath their touch. "No," Emma cried, throwing herself across Hunter's chest. "Please, Hunter, wake up." Jack gathered his daughter against him, his own tears falling freely as he held her. Together, they knelt beside the loyal guardian who had protected their family to his last breath. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, help finally arriving too late. The sirens grew louder, piercing the night as Jack held Emma against his chest, both of them grieving over Hunter's still form. The shepherd lay motionless on the blood-stained floor, his once watchful eyes now closed, his powerful body unnaturally still. Through his tears, Jack noticed something odd, a barely perceptible rise and fall of Hunter's chest, so slight he thought he might be imagining it. "Emma," he whispered, hope flickering dangerously. "Look at Hunter's chest. Is he—" Emma pulled back from her father, wiping tears with the back of her hand as she studied the shepherd. "He's breathing," she cried. "Daddy, he's still breathing." Jack immediately pressed his fingers against Hunter's neck, feeling for a pulse. There it was, faint and irregular, but definitely present. Hunter wasn't dead, but he was close, his body having gone into a state of shock to preserve vital functions. "He's alive," Jack confirmed, a surge of desperate energy flooding him. "We need to stop this bleeding." The front door burst open as Agent Reynolds rushed in, weapon drawn, followed by a tactical team. She took in the scene with one sweeping glance, Blackwood unconscious on the floor, Dr. Andrews bleeding by the wall, and Jack and Emma huddled over Hunter's body. "We need a veterinary emergency team now," Jack shouted. "Hunter's still alive." Reynolds holstered her weapon, immediately speaking into her radio as her team secured Blackwood and checked Dr. Andrews. "The dog needs immediate medical attention," she ordered. "And get Andrews stabilized for transport." "What happened?" Jack asked, pressing a cushion against Hunter's worst wound. "The perimeter team remote gas attack," Reynolds explained tersely, kneeling to help apply pressure to Hunter's injuries. "When we lost contact with the house, we mobilized backup from town. Dr. Andrews must have disabled the alarm system to let Blackwood in." Emma hadn't moved from Hunter's head, her small hands gently stroking his ears as she whispered to him, "Stay with us. Hunter, please stay. We need you." The next hour passed in a blur. Paramedics stabilized Dr. Andrews, who had taken a bullet to the abdomen but would survive. Blackwood was handcuffed and removed, still unconscious from Jack's blow. An emergency veterinary team arrived, working feverishly over Hunter as Jack and Emma watched, refusing to leave his side. "His condition is critical," the veterinarian finally told them, her expression grave. "He's lost too much blood, and the internal injuries from the earlier wounds were aggravated by the fight. Honestly, it's remarkable he's held on this long." "But he could survive," Jack pressed, holding Emma's hand tightly. The vet hesitated. "It's possible, but he'll need specialized care, blood transfusions, possibly surgery. The closest facility equipped for this level of trauma is in Richmond." "Then that's where we're going," Jack said without hesitation. Within 30 minutes, they were in a medical transport helicopter. Hunter strapped to a stretcher with IV fluids running into his leg. Emma sat beside the shepherd, refusing to release his paw, while Jack watched helplessly as the medical team continued their life-saving measures. "He's playing dead," Emma said suddenly as they neared Richmond. Jack leaned closer, not sure he'd heard correctly over the helicopter's noise. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" "Mom taught him to play dead when he was in danger." Emma explained, her eyes never leaving Hunter's face. It was part of his military training. She said it could save his life someday. Jack stared at his daughter in amazement. You think he's doing that now deliberately? Emma nodded with absolute certainty. He slowed his breathing down when the bad man was there. I saw him do it. He's waiting until it's safe to wake up. The veterinarian exchanged glances with Jack, clearly thinking this was just a child's wishful thinking. But Jack wasn't so sure. Hunter had demonstrated intelligence and training far beyond an ordinary dog. Could he really have the ability to control his bodily functions to such a degree? The Richmond Veterinary Trauma Center was waiting when they landed. Hunter was whisked away immediately, leaving Jack and Emma in a sterile waiting room, still spattered with the shepherd's blood. He's going to make it, Emma said with the unshakable faith of a child. He promised Mom he'd protect us, and Hunter always keeps his promises. Jack pulled his daughter close, wishing he shared her certainty. When did your mom tell you about Hunter's promises? The night before she died, Emma said simply, and Jack felt his heart constrict. She came to my room and said if anything ever happened to her, Hunter would keep me safe. She made me promise to trust him, no matter what. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Jack asked gently. Emma's eyes filled with fresh tears. Because you were so mad at Hunter after Mom died. You kept saying it was his fault. I was afraid you'd get rid of him if you knew Mom trusted him more than anyone. The truth of his daughter's words cut deep. In his grief and alcoholic haze, Jack had indeed blamed Hunter, had abandoned the dog at the shelter, had resented Emma's attachment to him after she'd insisted on adopting him. How much pain could have been avoided if he'd simply trusted Sarah's judgment about the dog she'd trained? Hours passed in the waiting room. Agent Reynolds arrived, bringing clean clothes and food, updating them on the case developments. Dr. Andrews had regained consciousness and was cooperating fully, providing details about Blackwood's operation that would lead to dozens of arrests across multiple states. More importantly, she had revealed the locations of several children currently being held for transport children who were now being rescued and reunited with their families. Sarah's evidence was the key, Reynolds told Jack. Without those waterproof cases Hunter retrieved, we would never have been able to build such a comprehensive case so quickly. And Blackwood? Jack asked, keeping his voice low so Emma, who had finally fallen asleep on a waiting room couch, wouldn't hear. Multiple counts of kidnapping, trafficking, murder. He'll never see the outside of a prison again. Reynolds assured him. Dr. Andrews is facing charges too, though her cooperation and the fact that she ultimately tried to protect Emma will likely be considered. A door opened, and the lead veterinarian emerged, looking exhausted but cautiously optimistic. Jack gently woke Emma as the doctor approached. Hunter has made it through the first critical phase, she announced. We've stabilized his bleeding, repaired the damage to his lung, and started blood transfusions. His vital signs are stronger than I would have expected, given the extent of his injuries. Can we see him? Emma asked immediately. The veterinarian nodded. Briefly. He's heavily sedated, but familiar voices and scents might help. They followed her through swinging doors into an intensive care unit designed for large animals. Hunter lay on a padded table, connected to monitoring equipment, his body nearly unrecognizable beneath bandages and tubes. Despite the dire appearance, his chest rose and fell in a steady rhythm. Emma approached without hesitation, placing her hand gently on Hunter's head. I told you he'd make it, she said to Jack. He was just waiting until it was safe. As if responding to her voice. Hunter's eyelids fluttered. The monitoring equipment showed a slight increase in heart rate. "That's remarkable," the veterinarian murmured, checking the readings. "He's responding to your presence." Jack moved closer, placing his hand beside Emma's on Hunter's head. "We're here, boy," he said softly. "You're safe now. We all are. Thanks to you." Hunter's eyes opened just a fraction, focusing with effort on Jack's face. The recognition there was unmistakable, as was the exhaustion. After a moment, his eyes closed again, but the monitors showed he remained conscious, listening. "I've never seen anything like it," the veterinarian admitted. "His response to you both defies medical explanation. Most animals with these injuries would be completely unresponsive." "He's not most animals," Jack said simply. They stayed beside Hunter for another hour before the medical team insisted they get some rest. Agent Reynolds had arranged a hotel room nearby, where Emma finally collapsed into deep sleep. Jack, however, found himself wide awake, his mind replaying the events that had led them here. He thought of Sarah training Hunter at the pond in secret, preparing for a danger she must have sensed approaching. He remembered the night of her murder, coming home to find her body on the kitchen floor, Hunter bleeding beside her, trying desperately to wake her. Jack had interpreted Hunter's actions as failure when in reality the shepherd had been trying to protect Sarah, had been wounded in the attempt, and had stayed faithfully by her side. For 5 years, Jack had carried the double burden of grief and alcohol, had pushed away the very creature Sarah had trusted most. Yet Hunter had never abandoned his mission protecting Emma, guarding the evidence, waiting patiently for the moment when it would be needed. The next morning brought unexpected news. Dr. Patel, who had been cleared of any involvement with Blackwood's plans, arrived at the hospital with a small wooden box. "This was hidden in Hunter's bed at your house," she explained, handing it to Jack. "The FBI team found it when they were gathering evidence. It has your name on it." The box was simple, handcrafted, with "For Jack" burned into the lid in Sarah's distinctive handwriting. With trembling hands, Jack opened it to find a sealed envelope and a small voice recorder. "I'll give you some privacy," Dr. Patel said. Stepping out of the waiting room, Jack pressed play on the recorder, and Sarah's voice filled the room, bringing tears to his eyes. "Jack, if you're listening to this, something has happened to me. I'm sorry I kept my investigation from you, but I needed to protect you and Emma from what I discovered. Blackwood is dangerous, more dangerous than anyone in town realizes. I've hidden evidence that will expose his entire operation, but I can only trust Hunter with its location. He's been trained to retrieve it if it's ever needed." There was a pause, and Jack could hear Sarah taking a deep breath. "I need you to trust Hunter. Jack, he'll protect Emma. He'll finish what I started. And someday, he'll help you find your way back to yourself. Forgive me for the secrets. I love you both more than anything." The recording ended. Jack opened the envelope with shaking hands to find a letter filled with details about Sarah's investigation, along with photographs of Hunter as a puppy in his military training program. The final page contained just a few lines. "Hunter was the best decision I ever made. Next to marrying you and having Emma, he was trained to protect before I adopted him. But I taught him to love. Never doubt that he would give his life for our family. If something happens to me, he will be your strength when you can't find your own. Trust him. Jack. He knows what to do. Jack sat in stunned silence, the full weight of his 5-year mistake crushing down on him. While he had been drowning in grief and alcohol, blaming an innocent animal, Hunter had been faithfully carrying out Sarah's final wishes, protecting Emma, guarding the evidence, waiting for the moment when it would be needed. And when that moment came, Hunter had been ready. Despite years of Jack's coldness and blame, the shepherd had never forgotten his purpose, never abandoned his mission, never stopped loving the family he had sworn to protect. A nurse appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Mitchell Hunter is awake and responding well to treatment. The doctor says his vital signs have improved dramatically overnight. They're calling it miraculous." Jack smiled through his tears, clutching Sarah's letter to his chest. "Not a miracle," he said quietly. "A promise kept." 1 year later, Jack Mitchell stood on his back porch, watching Emma throw a tennis ball across the yard for Hunter. The German shepherd moved with only the slightest hint of stiffness, his recovery having progressed far beyond what any of the veterinarians had predicted. Though a long scar ran along his left side and his coat had a few more gray hairs around the muzzle, Hunter raced after the ball with enthusiastic determination, his amber eyes bright and alert. "Easy, Hunter," Jack called, as the shepherd executed a particularly ambitious leap to catch the ball mid-air. "Remember what Dr. Patel said about not overdoing it." Hunter landed with grace, trotting back to Emma with the prize clutched proudly in his jaws. The bond between the girl and her dog had only deepened over the past year, their shared trauma creating a connection that went beyond words. Emma, now 9, had blossomed once the shadow of fear had been lifted from their lives. Her nightmares had gradually subsided, replaced by a quiet confidence that Jack recognized from Sarah's old photographs. "He's fine, Dad," Emma insisted, accepting the slobbery ball from Hunter's mouth. "Dr. Patel said his last checkup was perfect." Jack smiled, acknowledging the truth of his daughter's words. Hunter's physical recovery had indeed been remarkable, almost as remarkable as the changes in their family life since Blackwood's arrest. The house that had once felt like a mausoleum now hummed with life again. Jack had renovated Sarah's old office into a comfortable study where Emma did her homework, and he handled the paperwork for his construction business. Sarah's photographs smiled down from the walls, no longer hidden away but celebrated as part of their ongoing story. Jack had been sober for 365 days, each one a conscious choice to honor Sarah's memory by being fully present for their daughter. And then there was Hunter, the heart of their healing. Jack had spent countless hours training with the shepherd, rebuilding a relationship that should have existed from the beginning. Hunter had forgiven him with the uncomplicated grace that only animals seem capable of, accepting Jack's newfound respect and affection without reservation. "Agent Reynolds will be here soon," Jack reminded Emma, checking his watch. "Why don't you go get cleaned up?" Emma gave Hunter a final pat before racing inside, leaving Jack alone with the shepherd. Hunter approached the porch, settling at Jack's feet with a contented sigh. "Big day today," Jack said quietly, reaching down to scratch behind Hunter's ears. "You ready for it?" Hunter's tail thumped against the wooden deck in what Jack had come to recognize as affirmation. The shepherd had developed an almost uncanny ability to understand conversations around him, particularly when they concerned family matters. The past year had brought justice and closure on multiple fronts, Thomas Blackwood's trial had concluded 3 months ago with a sentence of life imprisonment without possibility of parole. His trafficking network had been dismantled, with over 30 associates arrested across 5 states. Most importantly, 27 children had been rescued and returned to their families or placed in safe homes. Dr. Andrews had received a reduced sentence in exchange for her comprehensive testimony. She had provided crucial details about Sarah's murder, confirming that Blackwood had come to the Mitchell home that night to threaten Sarah into silence. When Sarah refused to be intimidated, he had attacked her. Hunter, hearing the confrontation, had rushed to Sarah's defense, receiving the knife wound that had scarred his side. Andrews admitted she had helped cover up the crime out of fear and misplaced loyalty, a decision she would spend the next 15 years contemplating in federal prison. The evidence Hunter had guarded in the pond had proven to be even more extensive than initially apparent. Sarah had documented years of Blackwood's activities, creating a meticulous record that not only ensured his conviction, but also led to the recovery of financial assets that had been set aside in a victim's compensation fund. The Mitchell family had refused their share, asking instead that it be added to the fund for the trafficked children's ongoing therapy and support. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway brought Jack back to the present. Hunter was already on his feet, ears forward, recognizing the engine before Jack could see the vehicle. "Right on time," Jack murmured, as Agent Reynolds's SUV came into view. Cassidy Reynolds had remained a constant presence in their lives, first as the lead investigator on the case, and later as a friend. Today she arrived in an official capacity, though the small cake box in her hands suggested the occasion held personal significance as well. "Jack," she greeted him warmly as she climbed the porch steps. "Is Emma ready for the big ceremony?" "Getting cleaned up now," he replied, accepting Reynolds's brief hug. "Thanks again for arranging all this." Reynolds smiled, kneeling to greet Hunter, who received her affection with dignified appreciation. "Are you kidding? The director himself wanted to be here? What Hunter did, what all of you did, it's unprecedented." Emma burst through the screen door, now wearing the special outfit she'd selected weeks ago for this occasion, a blue dress with a collar pin shaped like a German shepherd. "Agent Reynolds, did you bring it?" Reynolds laughed, straightening up. "In the car, exactly as promised. But remember, it's just for the ceremony. It's not an everyday accessory." Emma nodded solemnly. "I know. Hunter needs to look professional today." The item in question was a custom-made service vest for Hunter, emblazoned with the FBI emblem and special recognition patches. While not an official K-9 unit member, Hunter was about to receive an honor never before bestowed on a civilian dog, the FBI Director's Award for Exceptional Service in the Public Interest. The ceremony was held in Oak Ridge's town square, a deliberate choice to reclaim the space that Blackwood had once dominated with his false philanthropy. A modest stage had been erected beneath the old oak tree, with rows of chairs filled by townspeople, law enforcement officers, and families of the children rescued through the Mitchell case, as they now called it. Hunter sat perfectly still between Jack and Emma as the FBI director recounted the extraordinary series of events that had led to Blackwood's capture and the dismantling of his trafficking network. The shepherd's posture remained attentive and dignified, as if he understood the solemnity of the occasion. "In my 30 years with the Bureau," the director concluded, "I have never encountered a case quite like this one. A dog who not only protected a child from abduction but also preserved crucial evidence for 5 years, then led investigators to its location when the time was right. He shook his head in amazement. If I hadn't reviewed the case files myself, I might not have believed it. Emma beamed with pride as Hunter was called forward to receive his award, a specialized medal attached to his new vest by the director himself. The shepherd accepted the attention with characteristic grace, though Jack noticed his eyes constantly returning to Emma, checking that she remained safe even in this moment of recognition. After the ceremony, as townspeople gathered to congratulate them, Sheriff Cooper approached, his expression a mix of regret and respect. "I owe you all an apology," he said, extending his hand to Jack. "I should have taken your concerns more seriously from the beginning, and I certainly should have paid more attention to what Hunter was trying to tell us." Jack accepted the handshake. 5 years of resentment finally fading. We all missed things we shouldn't have, myself included. Later that afternoon, when the crowds had dispersed and the excitement had quieted, Jack drove his family to the small hillside cemetery where Sarah was buried. It was their first visit as a complete family. Jack, Emma, and Hunter since Sarah's funeral 5 years earlier. Hunter had never been allowed to accompany them before, Jack having irrationally feared that the dog's presence would somehow dishonor Sarah's memory. Now he understood how wrong he had been. If anyone deserved to stand at Sarah's grave, it was the faithful guardian who had carried out her final wishes at such great personal cost. The cemetery was peaceful in the late afternoon light, wildflowers nodding in the gentle breeze. Sarah's headstone was simple white marble, engraved with her name, dates, and the words "beloved wife," "mother," and "seeker of truth." Emma placed a small bouquet of daisies, Sarah's favorite, at the base of the stone. "Mom would be proud of Hunter today," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions of the moment. "She'd be proud of you, too," Jack replied, placing his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "You never gave up on Hunter, even when I did." Hunter approached the headstone slowly, his nose working as he detected scents imperceptible to human senses. He circled the grave once before settling into a formal sitting position directly in front of the marker, his posture as respectful as any honor guard. "It's like he knows exactly where she is," Emma whispered in wonder. Jack nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He watched as Hunter gently placed one paw on the edge of the headstone, holding the position for a long moment before returning to his formal sit. The gesture was so deliberate, so human in its apparent understanding, that Jack found himself believing what he had once dismissed, that Hunter truly comprehended the significance of this place and this moment, that somewhere in his remarkable dog's consciousness lived a connection to Sarah that transcended ordinary explanation. "I think," Jack said finally, finding his voice, "that Hunter has been trying to show us something all along, something Sarah understood." "What's that, Dad?" Emma asked, leaning against him. Jack watched as Hunter's alert gaze swept the cemetery perimeter before returning to them, ever vigilant, ever protective. That love doesn't end when someone dies. It just finds new ways to guard what matters. They stayed until sunset, a family made whole again through sacrifice, forgiveness, and the extraordinary loyalty of a dog who had never forgotten his purpose. As they walked back to the car, Hunter took up his customary position between them, not merely following but actively shepherding his family home. At the cemetery gate, Jack paused for one last look at Sarah's resting place, now gilded by the setting sun. For the first time in 5 years, he felt her presence not as a wound but as a blessing, a legacy of love carried forward in their daughter's smile and in the steadfast devotion of the shepherd who had brought them back to each other. "Come on, you two," he said softly. "Let's go home." Hunter led the way, his steps confident and sure. Guiding his family toward the future Sarah had fought to give them one step, one day, one moment of grace at a time. They say wisdom comes with age, but sometimes it takes a loyal German shepherd to teach us life's most profound lessons. Hunter's story reminds us that even when grief blinds us to what matters most, love finds a way to guide us home. Many of us have faced our own dark chapters, losing spouses, becoming estranged from children, or battling personal demons like Jack's alcoholism. We've felt that crushing weight of regret when we realize the years wasted blaming others instead of healing ourselves. Hunter's unwavering loyalty, despite rejection, speaks to what our hearts most need to hear. It's never too late for redemption, for family to be restored, for wrongs to be made right. Like Jack, we may have overlooked the faithful companions who stood by us through our worst moments, be they four-legged or human. This remarkable shepherd teaches us that healing often comes from the most unexpected sources, and that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply to trust again